Okay, ladies and gentlemen, a pleasant good afternoon, good morning to good evening, whatever time of the day it is, wherever you are. Let me say a welcome to this, our 2020 International Education Week and Universal Children's Day, um, Education Solutions in the New Normal. Our team for this year is enabling transformative change for quality and inclusive learning in communities. My name is His Excellency Dr. Devon Bannister. I am the President and CEO for Macban Arts. I am your moderator for the first segment, and then Honorable Stan Strutter will be our moderator for the second segment. Indeed, it's an honor and a privilege to be here with each and every one of you to serve and to share our knowledge and our impact on education around the world. It's wonderful to know that we can come together and share our thoughts and our suggestions. So this year, education systems, whether, excuse me, circular or non-circular education programs faced challenges that negated programs like exchange education, global interconnection, massive contendencies, and ties enacting action on new era of engagement through dialogue agenda, digital distribution, learning platform, and best practices for re-engineering, creating professionalism, and critical thinking, build strong network and global partnership, and establish knowledge sharing and best practices across the world must be enabled to encourage new models, campaigns, and initiatives for providing education across all levels of education. COVID-19 has created overall disruption on global development from the local community, affecting human personality and well-being. Overall, systems are disrupted, including school systems, yet education still is the most paramount foundation for societal progress. Center for SDG, Global Education, and Macban Arts considers it pertinent to its continuous discussions during the week on the quality and inclusive education for lifelong learning and the commemoration of Universal Children's Day. This year's goal is rooted on the commitment to the decade of action on SDGs, reimagining a better world for all children, especially in migrant children, especially the migrant children, and the efforts to generating unstoppable movement for required transformation through unrelenting allegiance to quality and inclusive education for lifelong learning. Education Solutions in the New Normal is responding to the annual International Education Week on the 2020 Universal Children's Day, rekindles the global message in commitment to develop a comprehensive plan for inclusive learning in communities and increase capacity for transformation change on quality and inclusive learning necessary to effect meaningful change out of COVID-19 situation on education in rural community. I will repeat our theme today. It's enabling transformative change for quality and inclusive learning in communities. So it is indeed an honor once again to have all of these wonderful speakers here with us. We have ambassadors, we have prince, we have princesses, we have Her Highness, we have His Highness, we have many persons here of high caliber, many individuals who are well-versed, well-rooted, and well-grounded in the area of fields, and they all have a passion and a heart for education. So without any further ado, I would like to introduce to you our very first speaker, who will be speaking to us on enabling transformative change for quality and inclusive learning in communities. Please help me welcome Connie Renskin, Director of Global Education and Outreach, iEarn USA. Connie, over to you.
Thank you so much for your kind welcome and for your passion for education. That is very apparent. I'm going to start with the presentation, but it's saying that the screen sharing is disabled, if that could be corrected so that I could share my screen.
Yes, you can go ahead and share your screen.
Thank you. So as you mentioned, today I am reaching out to the enabling transformative change for quality and inclusive learning in communities. And specifically, I'm going to be focusing on project-based learning with the world, which is a specialty of IRN USA. IRN USA is the US arm of the International Education and Resources Network. And we work with educators to connect classrooms across the world in project-based learning. So less than 1% of students across the world have the opportunity to participate in an in-person exchange program across the world and connect to people from other countries. And that was before COVID-19. So you can imagine that most physical exchange programs have been canceled. And what we like to think about is, what could that vision be if every student across the world were able to have a meaningful international exchange experience as part of their education? And we're working with educators across the world to make that happen. So to give you a little bit of history about IRN USA, we started over 30 years ago as a collaboration between a school in Moscow and a school in the United States in the middle of the Cold War, trying to make that human connection and build those collaborative skills. Since then, we have grown in 2020 to now having contact in over 140 countries in 30 languages, and over 2 million youth have been impacted in that time in collaborating in projects across the world. We have 24 centers across the world, as well as different representatives in different countries. And so that also includes Uganda, Morocco, Tunisia, South Africa, Botswana, and Kenya, among others in the African continent, as well as many in all of the rest of the continents across the world. But why do we do what we do? And I think this is really important for us to take a look at that quality piece that we hear in SDG 4 of trying to build this quality education. And people have said that the skills that I'm about to talk to you about are called soft skills. And I take exception to that a little bit, because I call these essential skills or power skills that students and adults need today to be able to collaborate in our interconnected world. PISA, which is the Program for International Student Assessment, and many of you are familiar with them because you may have heard that a particular country is #1 in math or #4 in reading. And this last year, they took time to really examine what the global competencies might be. What are the people skills that are needed to be successful in our world? And they include examining that local and global and intercultural issues and having that critical thinking, if you will, so that if you don't know something, you figure out how to find out what you need to learn, but also that you're critical of resources of information and knowing, is it a fact or is it an opinion, and how can you do your fact checking to make sure the information that you're basing your decisions on is valid information. Next, understanding and appreciating the perspective and worldviews of others, and having an understanding that because someone else has a different point of view doesn't mean that they're necessarily wrong, but that the two of you bringing those different perspectives together can reach stronger solutions. Engaging open, appropriate, and effective interaction across cultures, and this is very much about communication skills and thinking about who your audience is and how that communication needs to happen, and also being reflective and respectful of the cultural differences that are there, and that again can contribute to the strength of a collaboration. And finally, that taking action for collective well-being and sustainable development. And so you've learned and gained this knowledge, but then what are you doing with that knowledge? Because if we don't share the information with each other, if we aren't working to take action to solve problems, then nothing moves forward. So at iEarn, we have pulled those out and created our own list, and that includes connecting students with a global community, developing and using their communication skills to connect across diverse audiences, that openness and respect for different perspectives. We take the action step one more step and say that it should be collaborative action. So we're engaging students to work together in their work together. And finally, developing empathy for each other and the planet and taking care of our planet. And as you will see here, our mission aligns perfectly with today's theme. And so when you think about today's theme and how we talk about making a difference within community, you can see here that our global collaboration does the same thing and tries to reach for this transformative learning, which is how we define those global competencies. All of our projects also have to answer the question, how will this project improve the quality of life on the planet? So we invite students, for example, in our Water is Life project, to take a look at SDG number 14, learn more about what it means and what the targets are, and then examine how that issue impacts and affects their local community and their life. Then they collaborate with those students across the world to learn how it's happening in those communities as well. And you may have heard the term glocal, and that is taking that global picture and bringing it down more locally to have that understanding of how these issues impact each other and how they're intertwined, and what happens on this side of the world impacts someone on the other side of the world and what that means in the decisions they make on it. I'd like to take a moment here to share this video that shows you how our project process works.
Have you ever wanted to connect your students with the rest of the world? Since 1988, iEarn has been doing just that. Students are crossing international borders and jumping language barriers to collaborate on global projects across subjects like math, creative writing, art, science, and history. In a safe and secure online platform called the Collaboration Center, students and teachers participate in dialogue and hands-on collaboration with others from around the world. iEarn helps educators connect and communicate with other teachers and students around the world using interactive technologies, engage students and subjects through creative collaboration with their peers in other countries, and empower students to take action and make meaningful contributions to their local and global communities. Interested in learning with the world, not just about it? Join us at collaborate.iEarn.org.
So I wanted to take a moment here to stop and talk about some of the best practices that we invite our students to consider as they interact online. And this might be in an app that they're working with online and doing WhatsApp or talking back and forth and other different platforms when they're not working together at the same time, but answering questions across different time zones. Or this might be also thinking about if they were able to connect via video as we are today. What we do encourage students in classrooms to do is to respond frequently and consistently. And so that if they are responding to somebody as they post something, someone is waiting for their response. And so encouraging them that we have a golden rule that says for every post that you make, you do 2 responses. And we also really invite them to think about the quality of those responses. And so that might be, am I listening to answer my answer, or am I listening to ask deeper questions and find deeper understanding? We ask teachers to create time and routine, and so a bit of a schedule as they can, and be transparent about things that might interrupt that schedule with each other. So that original framing of the relationship helps build expectations and meet expectations. And then, as I mentioned, just encouraging those questions in critical thinking and asking them to ask that one more question that helps them understand more deeply. As we tell students that they should improve that thinking, here are some of the ways that we do that. And one is that they would paraphrase the comments of their peers to let them know that they're listening and understanding their message. To tell their peers what it made them think of, or also to tell them how it made them feel. And then the golden rule, as I mentioned, where they respond instead of answering every time. We do have over 100 projects that students can connect with, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about these. But one thing I do want to really emphasize here is that teachers across the world both propose and facilitate these projects. So while we have about 100 projects running this year, we have teachers in many countries who are working every day with their classrooms and then engaging with other teachers across the globe. The Earth Stewardship Project is one of the examples that I wanted to share with you today, and I am going to stop for sharing here for a minute and show you a video of what their class did.
Hello, welcome to the Iron Virtual Exhibition. Our names are Flynn and Elena. We are students at St. Thomas the Apostle School in Crystal Lake, Illinois, in the USA. We are part of the Earth Stewardship Project, which can be found on Iron. We enjoy taking part in Iron's projects to help connect kids all around the world through the importance of finding solutions to the Earth's problems, including environmental issues. One of these was the Iron Peace Poster Contest, which is shown in the pictures above. We also work to solve these problems in our own community. This year, the students at our school created Team Green, a group whose goal is to discuss and find solutions to environmental issues in our community. Some of these topics include water wasting, deforestation, pollution, and destruction of animal habitats. We encourage you to bring Team Green into your communities as well. Students in our grade have also conducted experiments to help determine the overall best quality plant soil and organic fertilizer. One of these was the Macronutrient testing experiment, in which we tested organic fertilizer to determine which would have the largest benefits in plant growth when used. Now I'll turn it over to my friend Flynn.
Here are some more pictures of our macronutrient testing. Next slide, please. Another experiment we conducted was the Basil Experiment, in which we grew basil sprouts in uniquely designed soil mixtures for a course of about 3 months. Here are some pictures of our basil plants. We have conducted 3 experiments to test the quality of soil and plant growth. The final experiment we conducted was the soil lab. In this experiment, we mixed specifically chosen percentages of silt, sand, clay, perlite, and organic material to create superior soil mixtures with unique compositions. In the photos above, we are designing our custom soil mixtures. Next slide, please.
In more detail, the Earth Stewardship Project is a way for students all over the world to collaborate, to come up with creative solutions to the Earth's environmental problems. We hope to expand the Earth Stewardship Project to other communities around the world. Not only do we participate in the Earth Stewardship Project, but we also take part in...
So I wanted to share with that experience, I wanted you to see that elementary school students are able to participate in this work. It's not something that has to be at an older level, and that this is a space where kids can really connect and see how the global issues affect their community and how they can make an impact on those global issues as well. In conclusion today, I wanted to make sure that you understand that the connection is the most vital part of these collaborations. The students' critical thinking and all the skills that they build are secondary to their understanding of other cultures and other people. Thank you for your time today, and I would welcome any questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Connie, all questions, kindly please take your questions, and if you can put your questions in the Q&A section, we're going to allocate some time so that we can be able to answer all questions. But thank you very much for sharing those information with us. It was very much well put together. And it's good to see what those young children are doing and how much they love what they're doing. That's very good to know. And thank you very much for your services and for what a wonderful job you're doing with them. Moving on higher, we will have our next keynote speakers, 3 of them. And they will be focusing on various areas. So the first speaker that will be coming to us will be speaking on enabling transformative change in the era of COVID-19. Now we know COVID-19 has gripped us, well, not us, but it's gripped the world. So we have to try to deal with that and ungrip it. So in doing so, we have Ambassador Dr. Teresa Brown, who is an educator, who will come and speak to us on enabling transformative change in the era of COVID-19. Dr. Brown, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Bannister. And again, good afternoon, everyone. I appreciate the invitation to share. Okay. And, we live in serious times now. We have COVID-19 and many things have changed. Some schools have closed, and now we have remote learning, or a hybrid situation where children learn from home some days and some days they're in school. Now schools have closed, some schools. So there are many changes, but the aim or the objectives will be the same: to educate our children. And this is a time to be very, very creative in what we do, in the way we educate the children. We have to be creative to help them to continue with their lifelong learning, and also to combat situations like COVID-19 or anything else that might arise. There is a prediction about a famine that might happen. We don't know, but we are preparing our students to be lifelong learners and to be able to deal with any situation that might arise. So in light of that, I want to look at Bloom's Taxonomy of Education. And I'm just going to go through that very quickly because I know I have a shorter time. And this exhibits memory of previously learned material by recalling facts, terms, basic concepts, and answers. And we should always aim to educate our students at different levels. And reading comprehension is extremely important because this takes care of all the other subjects. Reading comprehension helps all the other subjects: math, science, social studies, you name them. And also to help students to become effective leaders, to make the necessary changes, and to change the world as they go on. Because as teachers teach, they're not just teaching for the moment in the classroom or when that class ends, 45 minutes, but they're preparing lifelong learners. So long after they have graduated and they have left, they are so motivated, that intrinsic motivation, which helps them to continue to learn and to solve problems and think critically and to change the world. We need doctors and cancer researchers to find the cure for cancer. And there are so many other things. We need different vaccines. Now we're looking for a vaccine for COVID-19. There might be the need to develop other vaccines later on. So we are looking for all of these learners, all of these students. And so we have to prepare them with that in mind, the way that we prepare them to understand and to comprehend and to think critically. Hence, the reason for choosing this. And there are some keywords that we would use in level 1, it's the lowest level, knowledge, like who, what, why, when questions are asked, how, define this or label this or show that. And again, that emphasizes the importance of recalling facts and terms and concepts and all of that. And there are examples which I won't go into of how we would word the questions, which is very important because this might seem simple, but students need the background. They need all of these concepts in order to lead. Many of them might be city leaders or governors or even presidents, and they need to implement policies and to eradicate poverty, and also to make sure that children are educated, adults are educated, and all of that. So this involves a lot. And I'll go to my next level. The next level is comprehension. It demonstrates understanding of facts and ideas by organizing comparing, translating, interpreting, giving descriptions, and stating main ideas, which is very important because this is I love technology and it's important with the computers and all of that. But apart from pressing a button and knowing all the the technological advances and all of that, that's great. But we need our to comprehend. We need comprehension. So we need to interpret things and to give descriptions and in different ways. We need to help students to know that they shouldn't plagiarize. They're doing a research. They should be able to read the information, then write it in their own words, put it in their own words, the same information in their own words to present an effective paper and to get rid of plagiarism. So all of this is extremely important, and all of that is needed in government, in different leaderships, in implementing policies, in law. All of that is necessary. So we have to, hence my emphasis on all of this. And keywords are extend, rephrase, illustrate, translate, demonstrate, interpret, all of that. And we live in a very diverse city where many languages are spoken. Immigrants come from different parts of the world with their different cultures and the different languages, and they need to learn the language, the English language. Many of them are learning. Of course, the students, the younger ones, learn it faster than the adults, but the adults are trying. So all of this is necessary, and the children are our futures, are the future leaders. So they need to be effective in the language, and even more than one, I would say, not just English, but other languages too. So, so that's extremely important. And so let us move on to our next slide. Our next slide is application. So whatever we learn, we have to be able to apply it. If we can't apply it, then we are in trouble. So we have to learn our facts, whether it's science, technology, social studies, law, whatever it is. Students need to learn and then apply. So they need to solve problems in new situations, but by applying acquired skills, there's acquired knowledge, facts, techniques, and rules in a different way. So it's stated one way, but they should be able to read it, to understand it, and to restate it in a different way. So that when they're writing their policies, or they might be writing a grant, or they're in their planning stage, or whatever they're doing, they can master the subject, the English language, sufficiently to bring forth the policies or to implement the policies that they need to do. And this applies to every language, whatever language that they might be doing that in their different programs in, it applies to all languages. So they need keywords are apply, construct, organize, experiment with, interview, identify, utilize, select. All of those are some keywords that can be used in the application of the skills, that the knowledge that is acquired. And this is extremely important for all subjects. And again, we have examples which I will not go into, like how would you classify if you're writing questions, midterm or final questions, how would you classify a type of something that they learned in class, and different things, how would you rephrase it, things like those. These are extremely important, and children and adults must learn to apply what they have learned. And this is quite different from pressing a button and from the technology, which I love, but at the same time, the technology along with the application and the comprehension and all of that will make more effective leaders, which we need for the future. And so we really have to emphasize this in all subjects with our students, children and adults. Thank you. Next slide, please. Then we go to analysis. So very important. Examine and break information into parts by identifying motives or causes, make inferences, and find evidence to support generalizations. So if they have a report to write, or they have a mock interview to do, or whatever they need to do, the teacher might give them some information and ask them to make an analysis. They have to be able to read it, to understand it, of course, and to break it up into parts and to write an effective analysis of that information. Some of them might become news reporters or anchors or whatever, might work on CNN or wherever it takes them, or in the planning stages in governments or leaders, presidents, whatever area of life that they choose to work in medicine. They will need all of that. to make analysis and to make inferences and find evidence to support generalizations. So very important. So they can find and that is why in the state test, there's a section there with the ELA, English Language Arts, where they're asked questions and they have to find details from the story to support their answer. That's analysis. They have to be able to do that. And this is very important that they can do that. And keywords are analyze, dissect, examine. What are your motives? Distinguish between one thing from the other, categorize, make an assumption, simplify, inferences, all of that. Extremely important in all walks of life. And again, we have questions here like what evidence can you find to support your argument? All of that. We know what's happening now. We hear different things happening with the elections and all of that. And they're they're saying that there might be fraud, but at the same time, they cannot come up with anything, concrete to say, well, this has happened or that has happened. They're just going around. But that was just a side thing I mentioned. But on a more serious level, the ability to do all of this, to make an analysis and to support the argument, a good analysis takes in all of this. So this is so very important. Next, all right, synthesis. Compile information together in a different way by combining elements in a new pattern or proposing alternative solutions. Again, they should be able to do that in all walks of life, in all situations. And this they could learn right there in the classroom from the elementary grades, right up through junior high to middle school to high school to college. And this is very important. I've heard of stories where sometimes young students, high school students apply to college and they are asked to write an essay in their own handwriting. And many of them, unfortunately, fail to write a proper essay. And, to express themselves and to support their argument, to have a correct topic sentence and have their thesis and all of that and to support it. Many of them are weak in that area in the writing. So this is so very important that they're able to write properly and express themselves. Keywords here are predict, elaborate, maximize, propose, estimate. And it's not just using words, but they have to be able to put them together, compile information together in a different way by combining elements in a new pattern. So they have to, again, all of this is reading comprehension. They have to be able to comprehend. Many of them might become lawyers. They will have to read pages and pages, hundreds of pages, the Constitution, different things, different case studies. They have to be able to read and to understand and to synthesize and combine elements in new patterns, and not just in law, but other things too. So this again is extremely important to have this background, which is very, very important. And again, we're looking for future leaders who will make new vaccines. or what might happen. It might not be COVID-19, it could be something else, or to find a cure for cancer or lupus. So we need our children and our young children, our elementary children, and all the high school children, college students. We need them to be strong in these areas of comprehension. All right, let's move on to the next one. Thank you. Present and defend opinions by making judgments about information, validity of ideas, or quality based on a set of criteria. So they might be given a set of criteria. They have to be able to read it, to understand it, to come up with their own opinions and make their own judgments and defend what they're saying. Keywords are criticize, determine, support, interpret. These are just a few of keywords that can be used. Explain, deduct, prioritize, justify, all of that. And again, we have questions, examples of how questions could be set. And this is very, very important. When they do the exams for law school or SATs or whatever exams that they do, they will have many of this to do. They must be able to read, to understand, and the questions enough to answer them properly. If they can't read, and some questions are very long. Some questions, you could have a question with 2 or 3 paragraphs, and that's just one question with different parts of the question. They have to be able to read it, to understand it, and to answer the different parts of the questions properly. And there are times too, they might be given 2 or 3 minutes or less. So this is very, very important. And this is why I choose this. All right, so this is very, very important to do that, because the world we live in is changing so much. COVID-19, they will have to listen to the news, read the newspaper, read articles, listen to documentaries, and make their own conclusion, come up with their own conclusion and defend their conclusion. And more than that, to find a solution. If they are in medicine, they will have to find a vaccine, or they might be able to educate their neighbors, to remind them to wash their hands several times and to wear a mask, and just to implement and enforce all the healthcare policies and all of that. So we need leaders and people who will do that in a proper way, in a positive way, to bring about changes, because the world is filled with so many things, and the cities, so many situations. Poverty, we want to get rid of poverty. And one way to get rid of poverty, especially extreme poverty, is through education. So we need leaders who will be able to implement these things, different situations going on, and make recommendations, implement them if there are leaders, city leaders. And in the cities, we have so much poverty and so much diversity. So anyone who works in that area will be, should be able to do better with a proper knowledge of comprehension. When they can comprehend, they will be able to do better and make plans and not be afraid to make plans. I just want to tell you a quick story. And teachers should try not to underestimate students too. Just this week, I heard someone, an adult, she was saying when she went to high school, the guidance counselor told her that she did not need any algebra or any calculus. It was just no geometry, no calculus. Never did any of that in high school. She just did algebra 1, algebra 2, algebra 3, algebra 4. And graduated high school not knowing anything about geometry, not even the basic things about geography or calculus. Again, teachers must try not to underestimate students. And unfortunately, we have that happening in some areas, in some, sections of our community, especially in the poor neighborhoods. They feel that they're so poor and they're, underserved, and they are not treated properly. So we have to try to eradicate all of that. And that's a way of eradicating poverty. And every child needs a champion. Every person needs a champion. And the video that will be shown shows us that everyone needs a champion, and they'll be able to do better.
I have spent my entire life either at the schoolhouse, on the way to the schoolhouse, or talking about what happens in the schoolhouse. Both my parents were educators. My maternal grandparents were educators. And for the past 40 years, I've done the same thing. And so needless to say, over those years, I've from a lot of perspectives. Some of those reforms have been good. Some of them have been not so good. And we know why kids drop out. We know why kids don't learn. It's either poverty, low attendance, negative peer influences. We know why. But one of the things that we never discuss, or we rarely discuss, is the value and importance of human connection. Relationships. James Comer says that no significant learning can occur without a significant relationship. George Washington Carver says all learning is understanding relationships. Everyone in this room has been affected by a teacher or an adult. For years, I have watched people teach. I have looked at the best and I've looked at some of the worst. A colleague said to me one time, they don't pay me to like the kids. They pay me to teach a lesson. The kids should learn it. I should teach it. They should learn it. Case closed. Well, I said to her, kids don't learn from people they don't like. She said, that's just a bunch of hooey. And I said to her, well, your year is going to be long and arduous, dear. Needless to say, it was. Some people think that you can either have it in you to build a relationship or you don't. I think Stephen Covey had the right idea. He said you ought to just throw in a few simple things, like seeking first to understand as opposed to being understood. Simple things like apologizing. You ever thought about that? Tell a kid you're sorry, they're in shock. I taught a lesson once on ratios. I'm not real good with math, but I was working on it. And I got back and looked at that teacher edition. I taught the whole lesson wrong. So I came back to class the next day and I said, look, guys, I need to apologize. I taught the whole lesson wrong. I'm so sorry. I said, that's okay, Miss Pearson. You were so excited. We just let you go. I have had classes that were so low, so academically deficient that I cried. I wondered, how am I going to take this group in 9 months from where they are to where they need to be? And it was difficult. It was awfully hard. How do I raise the self-esteem of a child and his academic achievement at the same time? One year I came up with a bright idea. I told all my students, you were chosen to be in my class because I am the best teacher and you are the best students. They put us all together so we could show everybody else how to do it. One of the students said, really? I said, really? We have to show the other classes how to do it. So when we walk down the hall, people will notice us. So you can't make noise. You just have to strut. And I gave him a saying to say, I am somebody. I was somebody when I came. I'll be a better somebody when I leave. I am powerful and I am strong. I deserve the education that I get here. I have things to do, people to impress, and places to go. And they said, yeah. You say it long enough, it starts to be a part of you. And so I gave a quiz, 20 questions. Student missed 18. I put a +2 on this paper and a big smiley face. He said, Miss Pearson, is this an F? I said, yeah. He said, then why'd you put a smiley face? I said, because you on the roll. You got 2 right, you didn't miss them all. I said, and when we review this, won't you do better? He said, yes, ma'am, I can do better. You see, -18 sucks all the life out of you. +2 said, I ain't all bad. For years, I watched my mother take the time at recess to review, go on home visits in the afternoon, buy combs and brushes and peanut butter and crackers to put in her desk drawer for kids that needed to eat, and a washcloth and some soap for the kids who didn't smell so good. See, it's hard to teach kids who stink. And kids can be cruel. And so she kept those things in her desk, and years later, after she retired, I watched some of those same kids come through and say to her, you know, Miss Walker, you made a difference in my life. You made it work for me. You made me feel like I was somebody when I knew at the bottom I wasn't. And I want you to just see what I've become. And when my mama died 2 years ago at 92, there were so many former students at her funeral. It brought tears to my eyes, not because she was gone, but because she left a legacy of relationships that could never disappear. Can we stand to have more relationships? Absolutely. Will you like all your children? Of course not. And you know your toughest kids are never absent. Never. You won't like them all, and the tough ones show up for a reason. It's the connection, it's the relationships. And while you won't like them all, the key is they can never, ever know. So teachers become great actors and great actresses, and we come to work when we don't feel like it, and we listen to policy that doesn't make sense, and we teach anyway. We teach anyway because that's what we do. Teaching and learning should bring joy. How powerful would our world be if we had kids who were not afraid to take risks, who were not afraid to think, and who had a champion? Every child deserves a champion, an adult who will never give up on them, who understands the power of connection and insists that they become the best that they can possibly be. Is this job tough? You betcha. Oh God, you betcha. But it is not impossible. We can do this. We're educators. We're born to make a difference. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Brown. And I hope everyone enjoyed that video as well. Indeed, it really takes you into the light of a teacher. But thank you very much. Let's move right along.
You're welcome.
Our next speaker will be speaking to us on reimagining transformative change, situations in community schools. Speaking to us will be Dr. Osita. He is the president for Sub-Saharan Open University for Africa. Dr. Osita, over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Devon. This is an experience from Africa, and this keynote is going to take us around Africa. We'll start with Nigeria, we'll go to Uganda. From Uganda, we'll go to Tanzania, from Tanzania to Cote d'Ivoire, and then from there to Niger Republic, and then close with Ghana. Monguno, Nigeria. Modu Umar is 13 years old, and when he grows up, he wants to be a doctor or a policeman or possibly a lawyer. He hasn't quite made up his mind yet, but it is clear that a little man from Monguno in Northeast Nigeria has big dreams, and he knows he will have to work hard to achieve them. If I become a big boy, he says, and I finish school, I will become a doctor. But if I want to become a doctor, I will need English and maths to help me. But for many months, it looked like Modu's dream will not become a reality because he has been at home. He's been home for more than 8 months, COVID-19. Nigeria has a vast coastline of river tributaries that irrigate the southern part. Yet insufficient access of clean water contributes to millions of deaths every year. 1 in 7 children will die in Nigeria before they reach the age of 5, many of them from waterborne diseases. Hygiene is being made a central part of the curriculum in a primary school in Katsina in Nigeria, where waterborne diseases contribute to high child mortality rates. Community classrooms are here now for the rescue because they are beginning to raise curriculums to teach hygiene. Uganda, East Africa. A school project began with the population demanding to rebuild St. Mary's School in a village called Kikajo. As the current space is in an alarming situation, the school had been dilapidated. From this demand, the project became research for the meaning of education, and the work based in a community social psychology program became the attention of the entire country. Teachers training, encourage reading and critical thinking, involve family in community, and construct a new building for the school became the community classroom for that district in Uganda. Uganda, second story. More than 38 billion children in sub-Saharan Africa are without school to attend. More than 38 billion children in sub-Saharan Africa has no school to attend. Many countries have initiated programs guaranteeing a free education to every child, yet they are plagued with the chronic classroom shortages, and as they lack the means to construct enough schools to meet this demand. But in Uganda, this is something that has become a very critical attention to the government because they are looking at students walk around in communities, scribbling their lessons on the depths of the soil because of lack of proper learning materials, or even gathering under a tree to learn. So the school project in Uganda will fund the construction of community schools, stakeholder-sustained, primary-led academy, and 325 students enrolled in Uganda will become scholars. The academy will be comprised of 7 classrooms, an office space, a library, a meeting place, toilets, and an open field for recreation. That's one hope in East Africa. Next is Tanzania. From far away, the local conditions are difficult to grasp. Introducing the community classroom project in Tanzania, people started to grow new hopes because children are being supported now to stay in school. You'll be overwhelmed by the gratitude and cordiality of the children because they see community education as their future. Working every day, the local team would do their best to provide the children with better education and a chance for a better future. That is a new hope for Africa. Second story in Tanzania. New community classrooms from Khanna Primary School in Tanzania is being built because the children had been out of school for lack of places to go. But the strange part there is that even new schools are taking longer time to build in Africa. But the school in Tanzania came between 7 and 9 months. The fastest that have been built in Africa and in East Africa. There's a third story from Tanzania, and this will touch your heart. New teaching approaches improve primary education in Tanzania. Most Africans did not take a critical look at the educational model inherited from the colonialists. The colonialists did not want a thinking African, but an automation such as a clerk, factory worker, an office messenger, a houseboy, a farm boy, or even a courier. They had no vested interest in Africa than to take its resources while using the few Africans they have educated in quotes. The model is still alive and well. And for this reason, Africa is not catching up with the rest of the world. Most teachers unknowingly educate their students to become office clerks, a highly respected position during the colonialism. No one is teaching students to be critic of what is being presented. No one is trying to come up with any other solutions for problems Africans face. Guess what? Neocolonialism is at its best now. But what shall we do? Community education. Cote d'Ivoire in West Africa. From cocoa field to classroom in Cote d'Ivoire. Kofikoro is a community for farmers about 20 kilometers from San Pedro, the second largest port city in the country. The main crop is cocoa. Raw beans are grown also, harvested and exported to be transformed into chocolate bars for those with sweet tooth the world over. Cote d'Ivoire's cocoa production accounts for approximately 40% of the world's supply of cocoa. Most cocoa is produced in the southwest of the country, but exported.
Next, we will have speaking to us on comprehensive plan for inclusive learning in communities to increase capacity for transformation change on equality and inclusive learning. Coming to speak to us will be Dr. Akil Kalifani, Director, African Studies, Essex County College, New Jersey. Dr. Akil, over to you, sir.
Yes. Hello, everybody. How are you doing today?
Hi.
Well, it's an honor to be here. I'm glad that to hear the folks who went before me. I thank everybody for being here with us. I just want to reflect a little bit on some things I've been talking about. It's interesting that this conference is going on right now. I'm actually a part of another conference going on at the same time, and it focuses on ed tech. And so then the people organizing this particular conference are talking about the advent of technology and the usage of it during these times. And as I was thinking about this particular conference here, that I was, we're talking about where there is a void of resources to address the pandemic, in essence, how folks are being educated, whether it's K through 12 or otherwise, in these times. And there's several things that I wanted us to think about in regards to that. We had one of the things that was already spoken of was the idea of relationships and the value in relationships. And when we think about that as partnering with where we are, that the relationships are multifaceted, right? So that we have to think about the relationships that even the children have to each other. We have to think about the relationships. Well, let me take a step back first and foremost. First of all, I'm a university professor. I teach at Essex County College. I run the Africana Institute and the Center for Global Education and Experiences. And as someone who's been doing that for the last 15 years, traveling around and teaching and helping people to learn a wide variety of things while we're in these diverse learning environments, that we have students who come to us from a wide set of with a wide set of resources, but then we interact with students all around the world who have even a wider set of resources or lack thereof. And I was speaking with my colleagues in South Africa because I was there in January. And one of the things that dawned on me is that what happens when you have children who typically may have limited resources or very, very few resources in their educational experiences, do not have access to the internet or other things, but are confronted with the same pandemic that we're confronted with here and around the world. How do they get educated? How do we educate them? Because I see our responsibilities as global, not just in our hometowns, right? So I've been working a lot with looking at the Amistad issues in New Jersey and other places, trying to push education from another perspective. In fact, I recently ran for U.S. Congress in New Jersey's 10th Congressional District, and education reform is one of my major platform issues. And so when Dr. Ada asked me to think about educational experiences where folks might not have access to it, what came to me in my conversations with folks was that we've got to think about that maybe we need to go back to basics, right? And that in thinking about the basic ways that we do education and have done education for thousands of years may in fact be the type of thing that we need to look at in terms of being able to provide educational experiences for students who are confronted with the pandemic, right? That we've had young folks who've been educated without the internet, who've been educated without computers for thousands of years, but we become handicapped in our mindset today to think that that's the only way for us to become educated and to educate folks. And I think that handicap is really on us as educators and adults and not on the children. So we impose our handicap of how to educate on them when they're receptive to however we bring education to the table. They may not, and let me just, I want to contextualize this in another way. So I lived in South Africa in 1995. I was there studying Zulu, Afrikaans, and Southern African history and culture. But one of the places I landed on in 95 and in 94 when I was in South Africa was the University of South Africa, which at the time was one of the biggest educational institutions on the continent. But what I didn't know before I went there, because I lived in Pretoria where the main campus was, is that this school had over 100,000 students. And I'm like, wow, how did they do that? But the key was that it was a correspondence school. And that correspondence may be something that we need to think about going back to basics. That in these times, if we were to take whatever our educational resources are and to deliver them to children and to families and to communities where they are, and that they may not have technology, that they could then use those educational resources to continue their experiences. Because some of the young folks have no access to education right now. And what folks have been telling me, and I did some calling around to find out what is going on in so-called less developed countries or communities, maybe a better way of saying it. And that one of the things is that it not only affects the children, but it's affecting families. It's affecting villages. It's affecting ultimately countries. Right, because if this goes on much longer and people are not taking their children to schools or being educated, and maybe their parents don't have as a formal education as they were receiving, then we have to say that you may have a year setback. And think about the impact of a whole year where there's no education going on, simply because we are relying and waiting on the internet. We're waiting on our proximity to be able to be comfortable again. But I'm suggesting that one way we can think about this is that, and some of this is being done, is that they've been using handouts and other things. Although I'm thinking of a different modality of delivery, right? One of the main ways of communicating across the continent is WhatsApp. right? Lots and lots of people, even in rural areas, use WhatsApp. And then they have something out of Nigeria now called Soft Talk. And so these different things that are available on phones, because a lot of places in Africa got more high-tech phones than they do in other places in the US or otherwhere, in terms of their access. They may not have a great internet connection, but if they were able to download, if someone was able to send them the materials for a group of children to learn, and you could have somebody in that community to take the responsibility of both disseminating and even if they had to learn it on chalkboards or wherever the tools that they had at their disposal to learn. But if there was someone who had access to WhatsApp and could take that information that they get and then use that in a disseminating fashion, then that may be another way to bridge the gap. And I think we have to look at as many ways that we can that may seem challenging or confronting to us to bridge the gap. Some places are using handouts and they're taking handouts. And I think that, these are not all ideal. I mean, here my children are learning at home on their devices. Not ideal. They're not happy. But the reality of it is that this is our reality. And the thing is that we don't know how long this reality is going to exist. And so we've got to step outside our comfort zones. And we've got to realize that it's not about just educating our own children, but it's about us collectively thinking about how do we educate the world's children. And each one of us has to broaden our networks and bring our resources in some kind of way. And that doesn't necessarily mean only money, but it means other kinds of, maybe I have the ability to develop something that can be then given to somebody else. Or maybe somebody else has another way of connecting. Maybe I know a place that needs something and somebody else doesn't know that there's a need there. And we use those relationships as the tools to do it. The other thing I want to say is that we have to maybe create a way for older siblings who are in the same households to be the educators of their younger siblings. Now that doesn't fulfill the void for the older siblings, but for the older siblings to help them to be the ones that teach the younger siblings could be another way to bridge that gap. And if they were given the resources, there's certain schools that I've read about and heard about that in fact they're private schools, and they have the high school students are the ones that educate, that are the teachers for the middle school students and the elementary school students. So they don't have quote unquote formal teachers to do that. And so that may be another way we can think about using the resources that are around us, using the network that we have in front of us that's maybe closer than we think. If a older child, maybe there's 2 or 3 that know how to read and the younger ones don't, then maybe they're actually tasked with the responsibility of teaching the younger children how to read or how to do math or whatever, teaching them whatever it is that they know. But we just want to be able to fill the void that we have in this process, and those voids that need to be filled. That I want to encourage us to think as broadly as possible for the ways in which we do that. And the last thing I want to say is that I wrote a book called The Hidden Debate, which looked at affirmative action in South Africa and the United States. And one of the things that we learned in that text is that, or in that research when I was doing it, was that oftentimes people think that the ideas that can catapult us forward always have to come from the West. And I want to suggest to us that we want to look more broadly. We want to look at what are the systems of education that are in so-called less developed or so-called third world communities that may provide us with ways to connect and teach that we have not, that we've maybe forgotten, that we maybe don't value. And so in that book, what we learned was, for instance, that there were some great ways that South Africa had in terms of understanding affirmative action and human rights in ways that the United States didn't do, that the United States didn't consider in terms of their both legislation and policies. And so what I'm suggesting is that we need to look in places that we oftentimes have blinders to because of our Western bias, for instance. And that doesn't mean you're in the West. Even people who are in less developed countries oftentimes think that the answers come from the West, as opposed to saying, and it's the so-called West, I would say, because you're west of what? And that's another discussion for another day. But the point is that the common use of terminology, the more developed and less developed countries, that we think that the only answers come from those supposed more developed countries. And I want to suggest to us that that's not necessarily the case, and that we need to be open and willing to look at the ways in which education has been going on for thousands of years and think about what are the assets there, what are the resources in terms of those educational experiences that we oftentimes, especially in times like this, we may overlook because we're so keen to think that the West must have the best answers, and that the technologies of the West, of the more developed countries, are the ones that we should rely upon. And I would suggest to you that this reset that this pandemic has given us, or has presented us with, is suggesting to us that there's other ways, and that high tech is not the only way to think about how you're going to educate folks. If your power goes down, can you do your Zoom meeting, right? If the internet is not working, can you communicate? And so then the question becomes, how do we do things if those tools are unavailable, or that they're not available to a great extent? And the one thing is that that we learn here during the pandemic is that you have in households, right, that may have internet access but don't have high-speed internet access, that you may have one device and 4 children. I have 4 children. My family is fortunate that they have access to high-speed internet and multiple devices. Many people don't have access to multiple devices and high-speed internet. So then if we're about educating all children, then what is our solution in that regard? Others may have no internet access. And so then how do we just forget about them in the process? No, we have to come up with solutions that are viable. Maybe it's about that the schools themselves need to have pickup places for students to come get resources that are non-internet based, because we've almost only looked at internet-based solutions. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't, but we shouldn't have them solely, because then we're inevitably leaving out some children in the process, some families in the process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Doctor. Thank you very much, Dr. Akil.
Yes, and the people can get in touch with me at irockwithdoc.com, or I rock with Doc on Facebook.
If you could put it in the chat, that'll be good, so everyone can get it. Let me say thank you very much to our 3 keynote speakers, as well as our educational open speaker. Thank you very much to all of you for sharing your knowledge with us. At this time, I would like to be moving on to the SDG 4 learning models. Coming to speak to us, the pillars of learning quality and inclusive education for lifelong learning and decade of action, SDG agenda. Coming to speak to us on this is Dr. Ada Okika. She's the Executive Director for Center for SDG Global Education, USA. Dr. Ada, over to you, Dr. Ada.
Thank you, Dr. Bannister. Thank you, and thanks to everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Go ahead, we can hear you.
Thank you. Thanks to everyone who have made presentation before. Thank you, Dr. Teresa.
Thank you.
That was a wonderful recap, especially the video on the TED Talk education. It's really an eye-opener to what we are being addressed today, looking for solutions. And then that video was looking at solution on the path of the teacher, which is very, very imperative to the learning models of SDG 4. The SDG 4 works to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote the lifelong learning opportunities for all. That is the very first concern on being able to address the SDGs and the 2030 agenda. And education seems to be very, very needed in order to expound on the concerns of achieving the successes of SDGs. And SDG 4 seems to be the bedrock of those solutions on SDGs. And then looking at that in particular, SDG 4 came with 10 targets, 7 targets in a summary, and then the 7th one has 3 items. And these targets are needed. So these targets are needed. The first one, target 4.1, talks on the free primary and secondary education. The second one talks about equal access to quality pre-primary education. And the third one talks about equal access to affordable technical, vocational, and higher education. Now, the fourth target on SDG 4 is looking at increasing the number of people with relevant skills for financial success. The fifth one looks at eliminating all discrimination on education. And then we have the target 6 as universal literacy and numeracy. Target 7 is looking at education for sustainable development and global citizen. And then that target 7 has 3 subheadings or 3 major concerns, which are located on build and upgrade inclusive and safe schools, expand higher education scholarships for developing countries, increase the supply of qualified teachers in developing countries. So the SDG actually is, SDG 4 is down talking about these targets in order to achieve all that is needed on quality and inclusive education for lifelong learning. But our concerns are rooted on how best are these targets and issues needed, how best can we achieve them from community schools. When I look at community schools, it breaks my heart of what is happening in very remote areas of community. When we're talking about leave no one behind, we also don't consider of such children in those areas that don't have access to these concerns on education. Now, the targets are talking about also equal access to quality and pre-primary education. The pre-primary looks at those in from 0 to 5 or 6 years. And then when we look at such targets, we ask ourselves, are they really for every child in this global world? Not minding the class of parents, not minding the status of families or background or community. And if that is true, that it includes everyone, then what are we talking? How are we seeing the COVID-19 situation? I grew up in Africa. I went to school. I had all my education in Africa. And I knew what it takes to have a school in rural community. Even up to now, in those developing areas of that part of the country that seems to be developed, and they have issue of going to school by through the Zoom, online, and all the rest, there are still challenges. Challenges in terms of getting the data to fuel your phone, getting electricity, charging your battery, and all the rest of that. These become challenges. And if this will affect those in rural, in urban cities, what about those in rural areas? At times when I see what is going on, I feel that some of the people in rural areas have not even seen a laptop. So this is a concern that we have looking at the decade of action. We just have 10 more, from January 1, we have 10 more years to the 2030 agenda. And these things are all inclusive. Education is very, very vital to development. And yet, we are talking about COVID and everything about COVID. COVID has tried to take over everything. But there were all these were existing even before the coming of COVID-19, that challenges of education lies in communities. Community classrooms, they lack teachers, they lack teaching and learning infrastructures. Qualified teachers don't go there. Children don't have insight. Just that the video told us about liking a teacher for you to be learned, to be in the a teacher. There are other incentives that can take a child to school. It is not there in communities. So I know when we are having a project on a girl, getting girls back to school, a community in my area have a school, and the girls there, what they do is, in fact, every Monday, a girl must bring snacks, drinks, soda to celebrate her engagement the weekend. One of the days we went to that school, the school was like in a family compound, And when I confronted the principal said, that is what the government provided. Now, in this kind of situation, how can you encourage a girl to go to school? Of course, the main thing is to get involved and get married. There is no incentive. So these teachers don't come, and there are nothing to keep them in school. And we are looking at leave no one behind. We are looking at quality and inclusive education for lifelong learning. So we are now trying to look at the pillars of learning of SDG 4 to achieve these successes. Learning to know, acquiring the instrument, building the curriculum from the community or school environment to create the understanding and resources for learning how to learn. Without this creation, without this availability, it is difficult to learn how to learn. Learning to do, applying the learned knowledge to daily life, to be able to act creatively and responsibly in one's environment, develop the competence to deal with many situations and to work in teams. Learning to do, because when you learn from the learner, when you learn, you can be able to apply, and that is doing. Learning to be, acquiring universal shared values, developing self-knowledge, becoming immersed in the community, culture, and development of learners' personality. Dr. Nyemeka was able to share a story of a child who has ambition to become a medical doctor or a police officer or whatever, but he has to learn. Now, learning to live together. These apply in most areas of situation, especially in school circumstances, teachers. Most schools, the teachers don't want to work with each other. They don't want to come together. Teachers in urban cities feel too classy for the teachers in rural communities. Now, it makes them feel inferior because there is no means of trying to carry their profession together, be there supportive to one another. There is no teaming approach to get each other as colleagues in one accord. So you see that some of them challenge them that junior teachers, they categorize them negatively. Meanwhile, they have the same degree, the same certificate of probably a BSc or MSc, whatever. But the fact remains that learning to live together, learning to come together, learning to appreciate each other is not in, and that is affecting learning on SDG 4. So the means of implement, we look at effective learning environment, looking at scholarship, teachers and educators, and then learning training practice. Effective learning environment is very important. Scholarships to give to these teachers, to give to children in the community to sensitize them, encourage them to come to school. And also professional development for teachers. Learning, training, and practice, getting them to implement the SDG 4 and the 2030 agenda. Developing the roadmap for quality and inclusive education. Educators are yet to fully put in place education development plan and strategies aligned with the quality, inclusive, and lifelong learning. So we are still looking at the practical solutions of pillars of learning. Solving education challenges using SDG 4 game design. Most of the speakers have mentioned some of the solutions, like Dr. Kalfani mentioned one aspect of solution, like use of technology, going back to the basics. These are some of the practical solutions that has to be looked at, and come out with skills and programs that can help to address it. Now, our organization commitment has been geared towards to address this quality with focus on community education. And we have tried to come up with Hub for Peace Project, Youthpreneur, SDG School Club, the Model UN SDG Education Pathway, Global Teachers Classroom, Education Solutions Stakeholder Series SDG Forum. We have also looked at Education Solutions SDG Cooperative, which were integrated into the UN SDG School Club. Then the YSDG now integrated into the Youth Together Global. And then also SDG for Advocacy Toolkit for community classrooms. These are also what we are trying to, and also the Education Solutions Academy. So these are commitments to ensuring the quality and inclusive education. And then what do we now say now is the Education Solutions 10-year strategic plan. It's hoped to help effect human development and collective transformation towards consensus raising, empowering learning, knowledge building, retraining, reengineering, retooling, and hands-on skill development to ensure quality and inclusive education. Our organization and our partner hope that we will set the actual machinery and partnership that will commit the success in addressing the quality and inclusive education. Of course, we are looking at unstoppable, the 10-year unstoppable movement, the decade of action, and give a better and consider a better future to all education in communities. We also would like to take up the project of to keep eye. Let's keep eye on community classrooms. And by keeping eye on community classrooms, it involves a lot. It involves looking at infrastructure, it involves looking at the teaching resources, the manpower, the human resource, and also the community stakeholders, getting them to address. We don't want to look at what government is looking. We want to look at the already stabilized schools in urban area. We are considering the children, the migrant children, the children in poverty situations, the children of less privilege, who are in communities, who have the vision to be medical doctors, attorneys, presidents and governors and political advocates, who want to be diplomats in communities, to get them back to achieving quality and inclusive education. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ada. Thank you very much for enlightening us and for taking us down this lane so that we can be able to know exactly what the SDG 4 learning model is. And thank you very much for your commitment and for your dedication. Moving on, we will now be moving into reimagining conversations. So for us to reimagine some conversations, let's take a walk down globalizing equality and inclusive education for lifelong learning. Coming to speak to us here, we will have Laura Francis Khanna, 1-3 Montessori School, Nambia.
Thank you for having me. Just a quick introduction. As Dr. Devon so nicely said, my name is Laura Khanna. I live in Namibia. I'm a born German. I moved here in my teenage years, and I've been working in Montessori schools, which is an alternative system of education, since I left school in 2012. My passion is to uplift education in Africa. And in the following presentations, we're going to look at some of the challenges that education in Africa experiences, as well as why Montessori is one of the best ways to address these challenges. Dr. Maria Montessori was an Italian physician who, at the beginning of the 20th century, revolutionized education through her unprecedented method of observing children. Her aim was that education should prepare children for life, not just for the next grade. In the world, 1 in 11 children does not attend school. And sub-Saharan Africa accounts for half of all the children in the world that are not in school. That's a pretty shocking statistic. Education in Africa faces numerous challenges. For example, there's 32 million children that are not in school. Only 20% of young children attend ECD centers. Now, early childhood is the most important phase of childhood because that's where all the foundation is based. Schools in Africa have awful infrastructure for a lot of them and a lack of qualified teachers. Although this has improved over the past 20 to 40 years, it's still not good. In Namibia alone, we have 30% of our schools that do not have access to running water. The curriculum is most often left over from colonial times, It's Eurocentric, inefficient, and although it's being updated, nothing actually changes to reflect the changing environment that our children grow up in. To cover the gap in the government education and state schools, a lot of private schools are being established, which tend to be really expensive and slightly elitist. Now, Montessori in Africa has a bit of sketchy data because Africa still suffers from the digital divide. But here's what I could find on statistics. AMI, the global Montessori organization that was founded by Dr. Montessori and does its best to promote Montessori and train teachers across the world, has centers in only 12 out of 54 countries. While many countries have Montessori schools, not all countries in Africa have Montessori training colleges, and the schools that do exist are often privately owned and quite expensive. There is a reason for them being expensive, which is one of the challenges that Montessori in Africa faces, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Other challenges faced by the school owners are the lack of trained guides, because there is a lack of colleges. The materials that are necessary for a Montessori school are often difficult to get because Africa is still quite remote and the community doesn't know about Montessori. Now, Montessori is an alternative method, and in a little bit, I'll explain why it's relevant to the education problems in Africa. I spoke to a few Montessori schools and teachers around Africa, and I wanted to share with you their perception of the biggest challenge of Montessori in Africa is the lack of quality teacher training at grassroots level, the government restrictions on alternative schools. For example, in South Africa, the government does not allow Montessori schools to have a 3-hour work cycle. This uninterrupted period is one of the hallmarks of the Montessori method because it allows children to really engage with material. How often have you sat in a lesson on maths, algebra, English, and you were just about to get it when the bell rang? Well, in a Montessori school, we've got the whole morning where the children can work on a concept so that they can really engage with the learning content. But government restrictions on alternative schooling make it difficult to implement these solutions. Another challenge is there is 1, 2, 3 in South Africa, 1 in Namibia, and then the AMI centers in 12 other countries. That's not enough for a continent as big as Africa, with education needs so diverse and urgent as we have them. Because of the materials and the remoteness and the lack of trained guides, Montessori schools are often expensive in Africa and are often becoming elitist because only the rich people can afford to go, which is not good because Montessori is the one thing that could really benefit the poor who have no other resources or access to education. Now, we had a little short overview on Montessori in Africa, education in Africa, but why is it that Montessori is good for Africa? Well, it has a few key factors. First off, it's based on observations. The whole method is worked around the fact that the teachers sit down and watch what the children need and give them what they need and then observe if it's working. So it's very true to life and relevant to the children because it gives them exactly what they need, no matter where they are, be it a town or a village or a farm. One of the key tenets of a Montessori school is the prepared environment. We spend, as Montessori teachers, a lot of time on setting up the environment so the children can be successful. This makes the whole method really flexible and versatile because we adapt the environment to what the children need. For example, in the Western cultures, the shelves are sorted from left to right, top to bottom, because that's the way we read. If you would go into an Arabic country, Most of the shelves would be sorted from right to left to reflect their culture. Another key point is that we utilize mixed age groups. This makes the method developmentally sound because we group children by their developmental needs. For example, 3 to 6 year olds that all have the need to move. It makes it easier to teach them, and it allows the children to learn from each other. It also resembles life more closely, because when you go to work, chances that you work with only people of your own age are very slim. The curriculum itself is integrated in all parts. The subjects are not separated. They are within the classroom, which makes the content meaningful and relevant, because everything the children learn is immediately connected to everything else, giving them an overview of how things work, why they work the way that they do, and how they influence each other so that they can develop their global citizenship. As I've mentioned earlier, we have the uninterrupted work period in the morning. That's normally 3 hours, and that allows for real deep concentration with the learning content, because you don't have to stop after 45 minutes. You can work with the same concept for a while, or you can work on it for a little while and then do something else. But there's also a freedom of choice, so the children are invested in their learning. Because education in Africa faces challenges, I've just quickly mapped out how Montessori can help. So in Africa, we often find a high teacher-student ratio, partly because we have so many people here, partly because we lack qualified teachers. Now, in a Montessori classroom, the individualized curriculum, the focus on independence and choice, and the teacher as an expert generalist means that we can have more children per teacher without losing anyone in the group. As for the lack of access and infrastructure, the versatile prepared environment I spoke about earlier, and the emphasis on embedding children in their community means that Montessori schools can be set up in towns, in villages, on farms, wherever they want to, basically, because the school will be adapted to the children's surroundings. I'm almost done, but the Montessori method is a lot more efficient, which means that we actually need less teaching hours to teach the same content as a mainstream school. Last point, Africa suffers from a high unemployment, but with the Montessori education, children grow up to be independent, creative graduates who are prepared for life and create jobs rather than seek them. That's me done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I did not know so much about the Montessori schools. Thank you very much for that enlightenment and that education. I'm pretty sure many of us here learned something where that is concerned today. If anyone tells me that they knew that, Dr. Ada. Thank you very much, Laura. Next, we will have speaking to us on the plight on community education. There will be a video discussion. This will be done by Gabrielle. Community report. Gabrielle.
Yes. All right. Good evening, every one of you. Can you hear me, please?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah.
All right. Good evening. My name is Yunusa Gabriel Enamali. I am a community reporter and also a farmer. I vie into this because I have an online radio, which I call Legal Radio Live on Facebook. And with that, I use it to report activities in the rural community, especially in line with the SDG 17 goals. And my concentration is mostly on the first 6, which is lacking. I can confidently tell you that 75% of the population of Nigeria are not educated. This is not because they don't want to go to school. They really want to go. I wish they can play my video for you so that you can see them. Virtually every rural community is far, far behind. These are some schools, dilapidated structures. These are dilapidated structures. This is a primary school. is very dangerous for the habitation of pupils. You can see them. They are extremely neglected by government. Government does not show interest in it. They want to perpetually keep the people uneducated. And of course, if the first 4 SDG program says that is me in the class, you can see how dilapidated it is. The people sitting on the ground, and I'm trying to see what I can do to get the attention of government. And as I speak with you, this school is yet to be built. Now look at the ceiling board there, which the teachers use as this is where we found ourselves at home. Now it is unfortunate that the government that is meant to take care of the people are not doing what is supposed to be done. Now these students, as I speak with you, they're about to start their examination, and 2,450 naira is going to be their main challenges, and about 8 of them are going to be chased away. Now this is how very, very little it is that they find it difficult to give their children education. I said it that whosoever is involved in destroying the lives of Kugite, may his life be destroyed. Please, government, come to their aid. This is Apelu. Apelu is in the Kina ward and it's in the Kina local government. As I speak with you, so many people can't go to school because they lack that social amenity, which is their right. They're not begging. Their parents pay tax, and they pay all that is required of it. They also vote for the government. And now what is the government doing? It's unfortunate that this is where we found ourselves. Well, my name is Gabriel, and I thought this must be reported, and that is why we have started. This is community report live from Apelu to you. There is no network, so I couldn't have gone live. Please pardon me, because as I speak with you, there is no network here. I have to record it so that I can post it to you. Now, when we move out, let's go. Now, this is the class of block where they go to school. Look at it. So we are not forming anything. It is real. And Apelu community, they have over 13 communities that spread love up to organic, but they lack just common educational, infrastructure. Please, government, come to their aid. Thank you very much. My name is Yusuf Gabriel Enomali. Until I come the way again from another quarter, community report continues. Okay? Until something will touch your heart wherever you are. And the reason why we're doing this, we need to bring you up to speed to understand what is happening. Now, come with me. Now, this is primary. As I speak with you, it is combined with primary 1 and 2 because they are little pot where the state has primary 2 has been falling down by a breeze. Look at it there. Now, come back. Now you can see the leaders of tomorrow. Well, according to them, let them see their faces. These are supposed to be the leaders of tomorrow. In this community, there is nothing like infrastructure here. No social amenities at all. Now, it is so upsetting. Look at their board. This is their board. Now, I need him because to come with me. This classroom is not. Now, I'm told that we have one extremely shocked with what you're going to get. They only have the teachers, and they are being paid by students. Now, tell me, how can this teacher cook? He has family, he has children. Now, the salary being paid him is on so-called percentage salary. Now, here is primary 3. This primary 3 is also combined with primary 4. Am I correct? Okay, this is just primary 3 alone. You can see them. Now, tell me, what leader of tomorrow are you going to make out of this? As far as they're concerned, nothing like computer that they would have ever seen in their life. Now, come with me. I'm going to show you. Now, as you come this way, all right. Now, you can see the Ashanti where they sit. This is in the Kenya local government in Kogi State, in Nigeria. Now, I'm coming back to tell you what even the Sustainable Development Goals says about education. Now, we need to begin to think very, very well, or else we're going to be in trouble. Now, come with me again. This is class 6. Now, I have this as class 6. Now, tell me, some of them don't even come to school. Why would they come to school? They are not encouraged. The teachers are not encouraged. The parents are not encouraged. Now, getting to this place, I had to use this Okada. It's not favorable.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, now this is it. This is GEA in a local government, like I said before. This primary school has class 1 to 6. And the number of pupils right now are about 6. The majority of them don't even come to school because they follow their parents to the farm. And nobody encourages them, nothing about technology that they have ever seen. No lights, no infrastructure, nothing. Now, they only have 2 teachers. The teachers are being paid by State Universal Basic Education Board. They call it in local, and their salary is 8%. This is extremely absurd. It is uncalled for. Now, the reason why we need to do this as part of our community report, we need you to come to the aid of this community. NGO, spirited human beings, where you are, if you are touched, ask yourself, would you allow your children to come to this kind of a school? The answer is no. Now, let's go back to what the first 6 SDG points, that is the 17, the first 6 out of 17. Now, the first one says poverty. Tell me.
Okay, thank you so much. You've seen this video. This is how it is virtually every rural community in Nigeria. It is so pathetic that the government has given a deaf ear and they choose to continue to treat Nigerians this way. And the only way that we can change this is to begin to tell the world the truth. Enough of window dressing. Let's face it real good. This last video you've just watched, the government out of shame because it went viral. They've come to build a school. They only build 2 blocks of classroom, that is classes 1 to 6, a staff room and headmaster office. Other infrastructure is not there. No fence, no toilet. This school does not have lights, nothing. So in terms of infrastructure, everything is against us in Nigeria. All I'm saying is that we need to intensify a lot of effort, and everybody that must see this come to fruition must all be pushed to the limit if we must achieve SDG goal. I'm going to send you my online station so that you can go there and watch other videos. Then you might probably appreciate what is going on in Nigeria, especially the rural community. Every community you go in Nigeria is terrible. And I appreciate you for this program today. And I know that if we can continue like this, and for us to also achieve the SDG goal in 2030, we need to intensify efforts. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir. It is indeed, it is indeed a hard sight, a hard sight. It's something that should not happen, because we know right in simple areas like those is where you have our next kings, queens, princesses. You know, they can go marry people of such sort, presidents, government officials. We have people of all caliber can come out from there. So let's take up the challenge to press on these governments, because it's not just there, but it's something that's happening around the world in many rural areas. Thank you very much to all of the speakers who have spoken in our first session. Once again, my name is His Excellency Dr. Devon Bannister. Thank you very much. It was my pleasure to be a moderator for the first segment. I will now hand you over to our next moderator, who will be taking you from here to the very end, Honorable Stan Strauter. Thank you very much. Over to you, Honorable Stan Strauter.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes,
very
sir.
well.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Bannister. We appreciate having you and appreciate listening to all those wonderful speakers that have gone before us. My major question was simply that with so much wonderful information, how do we begin to synthesize it and use it in a contemporary context from our speakers? I'm in what's supposed to be a modern city of over 200,000 children in the school system. With the advent of charter schools in our system here, we have about a half of the children in charter schools and some still in public schools. And we're still having difficulty trying to get this education process right. So I just want to encourage us all to be able to publicize these solutions so that we can share with educators, even in the modern cities across the United States. So thank you very much. And let me, without any further ado, I'd like to introduce our esteemed Dr. Devin Bannister to discuss the history and the UN message to 2020 Universal Children's Day. He is the president of McBan Arts, the NGO Committee on Migration at the United Nations. Thank you, Dr. Bannister.
Thank you very much. Hi, it's good to be back here with you wonderful people again. I couldn't introduce myself, sorry. So by resolution 836 on December 14th, 1954, the General Assembly recommended that all countries institute a Universal Children's Day to be observed as a day of worldwide fraternity and understanding between children. It is suggested that that day is regarded as a day of activity devoted to promoting the UN charters, ideals, and objectives, and the welfare of the world's children. The Assembly suggested to governments that the day be observed on the date and how each considers appropriate. The date, 20th of November, marks the day on which the Assembly adopted the Declaration of the Rights of the Child in 1959, and then the Convention on the Rights of the Child in 1989. The Convention, which is the most widely ratified international human rights treaty, sets out several children's rights, including the right to life, to health, to education, and to play, as well as the right to family life, to be protected from violence, not to be discriminated, not to have their views heard. Based on the convention and joint efforts by all the countries and regions, let us promote and celebrate children's rights on World Children's Day and continuously build up a friendly environment for children in the world through dialogue and actions. World Children's Day was first established in 1954 as Universal Children's Day and is celebrated on the 20th of November each year to promote international togetherness, awareness among children worldwide, and improve children's welfare. The 20th of November is an important date. It was the date in 1959 when the UN General Assembly adopted the Declaration of the Rights of the Child. It was the date in 1989 when the UN General Assembly adopted the Convention of the Rights of the Child. Since 1990, World Children's Day also marks the anniversary of the date that the UN General Assembly adopted both the Declaration and the Convention of the Rights of the Child. Mothers and fathers, teachers, nurses and doctors, government leaders and civil society activists, religious and community leaders, corporate moguls, and media professionals, as well as young people and children themselves, can play an essential part in making World Children's Day relevant for their societies, communities, and nations. World Children's Day offers each of us an inspirational entry point to advocate, promote, and celebrate children's rights, translating into dialogues and actions that will build a better world for children. This year, COVID-19 crisis has resulted in a child rights crisis. This year, COVID-19, so bad COVID-19 bad? Big COVID-19. The cost of the pandemic for children are immediate and, if unaddressed, may last a lifetime. It's time for generations to come together to reimagine the type of world we want to create. On the 20th of November, kids will reimagine a better world that you will do, a better world.
Yeah.
Let's work on that one. The answer calls for action and input to this year's theme as organized by our organizations, noting significantly that time is now for all hands to be on deck. to get concerns and issues concerning world children on board and address the relevance of quality and inclusive education for lifelong learning and better future. Thank you.
All right, my name is Elizabeth Schumann. I am with Childhood Education International, and I'm very pleased to have been invited by Dr. Ada, who is a great friend of our organization. And I am happy to talk about a better world for children. I was going to give you a very long and detailed information about why we celebrate today, World Children's Day, but my predecessor did that so well that I'm just going to skip it. I just want to add that the Convention on the Rights of the Child, which spells out children's rights and makes children agents of their own destiny, and really spells out that each country has the duty to make sure these rights are actually implemented. And so the children themselves, that they also have a right to be heard, that's enshrined in the convention. And so the children really know what their rights are. There is a child-friendly version of the Convention on the Rights of the Child, because the actual convention is very legalistic and very UN lingo, which is not always clear, even to many adults. But there's a child-friendly version which can be found on the UN website, the United, and also on UNICEF's website. So I would highly recommend that you download it and read it and share it with the children in your life. Talking about children, I want to start with a quote from Nelson Mandela, which says, "Our children are the rock on which our future will be built, our greatest asset as a nation. They will be the leaders of our country, any country, the creators of our national wealth, who care for and protect our people." So I think we should keep that in mind. So I want to tell you a little bit how my NGO is implementing or trying to create a better world for children. We have a number of, we're essentially a support organization for educators. So I would recommend that you look at our different programs on our website. One of them is, we are very strong supporter of global education, and therefore we would really recommend that every school make sure that they have a education for global citizenship program. Because as Dr. Ada said, we need to work together and we need to work in groups and we need to know what the other people do. And the other people, to me, is not only your neighbor or somebody in your city, but people totally on the other side of the world. We also believe that child health and well-being is a prerequisite for children's development. And that goes to very young age. And when you heard earlier the presentation about the Montessori school, I was thinking how important it would be for every child to be able to access that and to have early education. Good mental, emotional, and physical health allows children to think clearly, develop socially, learn new skills, and build the self-confidence to reach their full potential. That, of course, also means that their parents have to be supported and that there are good, well-educated, and well-paid teachers in each country. And I'm sure that is an area where a lot of advocacy is still needed.
Education for the future requires learning to live and work together. Children educated for global citizenship are better learners, better people, and contributors to a better world. Thank you.
So at this time, we'll move on to the integrative message to 2020 International Education Week and Universal Children's Day. Get on board, educators and experts for children of the world. Leave no one behind. I love that part. Leave no one behind. Leave no one behind. So if you have to jump overboard and get them, jump overboard and get them. And coming to speak to us here on this is none other than His Excellency Ambassador Dr. Dennis Antoine, Chair Advisory Board Council, Center for SDG Global Education, USA. Ambassador Dennis, over to you, sir.
Moderator par excellence. And let me greet the Honorable Stan Strouder, who is experiencing technical difficulty, but distinguished panelists, honorable ambassadors and educators, and our dear Dr. Ada Okika, who has continuously bring us to this juncture to reflect on a diversity of topics. Today, I am very pleased to be in your presence. I have had such a education tonight, and it's coincidence that a lot of what is said, it makes it easy for me at this point. My speech could simply be, I agree with everybody. And I thank you, and I can close. But I want to, for a moment, refer to a phrase that is in the theme of this conference, new normal. If you observe, it says new normal in some ways. And earlier when the professor spoke, and he spoke about education in South Africa University, my mind went there. But there is nothing normal about the time in which we are. The time is now for family engagement in education. Now, new ways of engaging parents as teachers in their children's education, parents as partners in the children's education, particularly in early childhood and primary levels. That must be one of the highest priorities in the current state of affairs. We can all agree there is anxiety, there is frustration in the homes, there is even frustration among teachers. So if we were to get on board for this rush to 2030, because it's a rush, it's a momentum going forward to transform the manner in which we think, which we learn, we can't leave anyone behind. Now, who are we talking about? Who are we taking somewhere to educate them, or are we going into a new mindset? So we have to recognize clearly what we're talking about. We have to put in context this takeoff that we're taking off. We have to put it in context to make sure that we are all of the same mindset. So the current crisis calls for shared strategies, and the strategies cannot be quick fix, but it must be maintained, and it has to come as insurance for after the crisis. You know, the term insurance means something for when things going bad, something for crisis, something for when you have a problem, you turn to your safety net, the insurance that you put in place to make sure that things continue to flow. Now, our education system must be, I think, renovated and set up to value parents' engagement. Now, and that is happening at all levels of education because the home now is school. And the parents are home, the children are home. So there's a lot of confusion, and you hear a lot of pushback is coming. So critical assessment is required now about how we teach. Therefore, the application of information communication technology must be considered. And in considering it, we have to remember there are lots of different learning modalities. So how do we have this one gadget, this one Zoom, this one link? How do we address the many ways there are to learn when we use in one mode to teach? So there it is. There it is that the learning modality has to be a factor as we begin to look at how we reach our children. So the current infrastructure requires boosting to reach all citizens. Now, the new models of socialization, now that is the big problem. You remember this, we're doing distance learning. We're doing virtual learning. I was glad when the professor mentioned UNISA, that is the University of South Africa, one of the largest in the world, of course, that is famous for its distance correspondence learning. Now, I went to Cambridge University in London, but you know I did that? I did it in correspondence. And we had local syndicate exams. So learning was happening. When I heard somebody mention that, I think it was Dr. Bannister, who reminded us that in 1959, this International Education Day was initiated by the United Nations. I was a child. Some of you on this Zoom were not born yet. Just let's think about that. I was a child in 1959. And some of you were not born. You were posterity. You were considered as posterity then. So here you are now, and we are celebrating what? We are celebrating international international education. And we want everyone to be on board. And we are talking about education in a time when we are challenged. Each of us who are educators are finding it a little more difficult than it was last December to engage our students, be they adults or children. But we have to also remember every one of us is somebody's child. So in the process, when you are teaching adults as learners must also be considered. When I heard Elizabeth spoke just now, I think she spoke about her experience. Now, how much have you changed your approach to teaching? So this not leaving anyone behind requires that we retrain. We teach, we reteach. So there has to be renewal. There has to be new skills of accommodating the students' needs for education. So, rethinking the global future of education is not about global future. It's about now. It's rethinking the global process of education now. Now, because the future is now. If we wait to rethink it for the future, what is happening now? There is a lot of discussion now about the lag, about the loss of learning time that our students are suffering. When we assess education, we have to also assess its impact on the mental capacity of people. People's mental ability is a little challenged right now. Not that they are insane, but it's a new psychology in teaching that we have to deal with. Therefore, we need now this global social network and the supply chain. Now, when I say supply chain, I'm going to go back to talk not about material, but let us talk about what has happened to distance learning and what used to be study abroad. Do you know how many $100 million the economy of this country is losing because of the number of students who used to come to study here, and the universities are scrambling, trying to cut staff, so there is a mental issue in the administration of education facilities today that requires some kind of coaching. In times when there was economic downturn and you have to do attrition, you have to let go staff, and you have to have, monies set aside for things you never planned. Everyone, the principal, the teachers, everyone has now a degree of anxiety and wondering, I wonder if they'll cut me or they're going to cut my friend. So we have to begin to recognize that this new normal is nothing normal. It is a state of reassessing going forward. So, and we have to do it together. It calls for collective response, and it calls for sharing. So the global social network, we have to make sure that we still are able to combat disparity and reach this to reach all. And already we know it is impossible because the infrastructure which facilitates telecommunication and the whole, you remember how much talk there was about connectivity? And there are so many parts that are not connected now. So are we talking about education today in the new normal only for the affluent? I heard earlier there are some who have not even seen a laptop. So we must think hard and think very, very clearly. Now, I remember when I grew up, and that may tell you that I am not as young as Ada or as Dr. Bannister. I used to, when Muhammad Ali used to fight, I have watched all his fight, and we used to gather around the radio, and I know when he got a jab, and we used to see the fight. We used to see the fight on radio. And we can discuss every nuance. Every time he ducked, we ducked. And we were only using auditory capacity. So we have to begin to realize that the modes of learning are important. And we are not all lost. There is still means to convey education to our people. And I was glad again that the professor brought it up. So critical thinking skills is a very important aspect. We have to include children in the solution. Children have a lot of insight into how to. I am thrilled that the Montessorian concept was discussed just now. Very thrilled. In the morning, I would be speaking to Montessori parents in Rome, Italy, because I'm a Montessorian in my learning, and so we would be discussing the Montessori approach and its ability to facilitate children's learning because it's child-led. The child is discovering his or her ability through the facilitating of that child. So we have to begin to recognize the issue of public space with new applicable protocols to prevent the spread of pandemic is a big issue. It's a big because the teacher is afraid. You remember there are songs that we sang with children when we go on the bus. That's out. There are songs that we sung when we go in the classroom, wash your hands, and this is out. So what we're doing today, we have to redesign, rearrange, and conceptualize new methods of interaction. When it was said that there are more than 7 ways to be learning, remember Howard Gardner and his how many ways to learn? We have to begin to know that even if a child is on the Zoom, he may have been left out because that's not his cognitive mode of assessing things. So how do we reach him? So there is room for a lot of research. And I hope that teachers begin to recognize that they can really become, I guess, experts by identifying new modes of delivering education. So the application of universal standards. So now remember, we were harmonizing the American Montessori Association and the International Montessori Association. While they are about Montessori, they all are like religion. The Catholic is a little different from the Anglican, but it is about still God. So I believe now teachers must talk about eclecticism, to borrow the best from all and do a hybrid. So we come away with something that is powerful because it has all the best elements. So eclecticism is a useful tool in education, as most educator would know. Now, so I would not go on for much longer. I would simply indicate that improvement of the connectivity network and the infrastructure for education to keep children educated, to retain teachers and to include parents, to sustain the civic responsibility of stakeholders. Stakeholders. Who are the stakeholders? Now the corporations have to step up and bring into the communities a hotspot here, a hotspot there, so we can bring it closer to where it's needed. We have to develop and initiate rescue plans and negotiate on universal inclusive coverage when we're talking about this carriers. And so leave no one behind has to include teachers as learners and children in new modes of learning. I would stop here because I can get excited and go on, but I would thank you for listening. And access to education and its impact on mental health, measuring learning, and methods of testing. Once I did alternative to paper and pencil testing. I had a research I did on that. Then I did something about, if you're looking at children, you have to look at language and logical thinking in certain stages of learning. So global transformation and course content and equipment, and I can go on. I thank you very much. I will stop here.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ambassador Dennis. Indeed, that was a mouthful, and I must say, you're a man. You seem like you're well excited, and you have a heart and a passion for education. I know who to call on now when we need someone to fire up our bases where education is concerned. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. Before I call on our media director, Anthony, to give us the closing remarks, I want to recognize the ambassador of Togo to Gabon, who has graced us with her presence from starting to ending, and she's here. Thank you very much, Ambassador Sidi, for being a part of our program today and for gracing us with your presence. Thank you very much for taking the time for being here with us. Coming to give us the closing remarks now and close us out is none other than our media director, Anthony Ugu. You're gonna, okay, sorry. Go ahead, Dr. Ada. After Dr. Ada, you will hear directly from Anthony.
Yeah, Dr. Teresa Martins has to step out on other engagement, other appointment. So she has her paper and asked me to do the presentation. And she asked me to let you know that from the presentations today or this evening and the agenda of this conference, you will all agree with her that addressing quality and inclusive education in community is most demanding, and for unstoppable movement to be ignited through the decade of action, a lot must be made to be in place for sustainable success. She noted that our organization, the Center for SDG Global Education USA, is yet vouched to expedite on what the mission stands for on SDG 4 and committed further to more action-oriented programs towards 1. Program awareness on quality and inclusive education situation in communities. 2. Advocacies to various stakeholders through presentation, mutual meetings, bilateral meetings, and discussions. 3. Create programs on retraining, retooling, and re-engineering curriculum to suit situations in community classrooms. 4. Urgent need is needed for improvement and compulsory education and conducive environment for all children in communities, especially in developing countries. As we queued in to the Universal Children's Day, we posit that all children must be provided with opportunities and tools to enable them to fulfill their inherent potentials. Teachers, caregivers, and educators should be provided with incentives and other motivations indicators to sensitize their career emotions and be able to work in community classrooms adequately. Philanthropists should work with education organizations in community to support and improve on the standard and quality of education in communities. Dr. Martin also noted that our organization is presently building on a coalition of education organizations and education stakeholders to form Coalition of Education Solution Network. To commit to research and development, thank God Ambassador Antoine mentioned research and development, evaluation of most community schools, develop advisory and advocate policy, and Dr. Martin is telling us to join in this endeavor and become a part of this coalition. She finally noted that our organization has committed to partner with Community Report Daylight Network to increase our momentum to address quality and inclusive education in communities, and informing that this will involve funding to recruit international educators and retired teachers to help with quality education in community. To Dr. T.C. Martin, he said that this work is yet enormous, but we must step up action and create pathway for solution within the decade of action. We must get everyone in education industry to SDG 4 solutions. Dr. Martin spoke as the chair to the board of Center for SDG Global Education. Thank you.
So good day, good morning, everyone. Here in Nigeria, it's midnight, so we are in the morning already. I want to use this opportunity to thank everyone that have participated in this program. And I want to say that it's by divine that you're here. God wants you to do something for him, and that's what you are doing right away. The lot has been said under education, and I realize there is two parts to it. We that are in Africa here, we need infrastructure more important than any other thing. In my community, they used to say, if you can't go to school, live at the school road. Just as I had been participating in so many education programs online and I've been educated. So thank you so much all for contributing immensely. The ambassador from Gabon, Honorable Stout, Dr. Teresa, Ambassador Antine, Dr. Devon and Dr. Ada, Dr. Connie Rensick, everyone, if I have not mentioned your name, Dr. Elizabeth Schumer, Yunusa Gabriel, thank you all for the great work you're doing to see that the children of our time have education. That is the only thing we can give to them. And that is the only hope they have. If they are not educated, they might not even know they are right or they are wrong. And majority of them will turn hoodlums, as they call them in Nigeria. Educated person will never be a hoodlum. Let us eradicate crime as much as possible through educating our communities. Thank you so much for attending this program, and anytime we call on you, we hope to see you again. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Teresa. Thank you for calling in all the way from Caribbean, Guyana, I presume.
No, she's right here in the US.
Okay. All right. And Ambassador Antoine, thank you so much for always being there for us. We are very proud of you and we are encouraged by your continued support. Where is Elizabeth? Unisa, you've got this so much, so it's a lot. We need more of those videos, and
yeah, you're gonna see more of them.
Connie, we have a lot. We have to rekindle our relationship.
Yes.
My friend
Elizabeth in the center.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Under 12 hours, you were able to. In fact, you made me so proud. Thank you so much. Your Excellency from Gabon, I can't thank you enough. Thank you for your time, and the ambassador of Togo to Gabon. We are proud to have you in our midst, and every other one who is here. Where is the Laura from? Oh, she's gone. From Namibia. Your Montessori product is very, very essential, and we have to explore on that. Interestingly, our advisory chair is passionate about Montessori. I'm so excited that he was here to hear you. Thank you so much. Who else here? Everybody is so much of so everyone in the participant, those in attendees. I see some of the teachers here as attendees. We thank you so much for your time and cooperation. And my thanks to members of the NGO Committee on Migration. And I see Maria was here on the attendee, and so our job has continued further from this point. Thank you so much.
I want to remind everyone to get on board.
Oh, it's true.
By looking at this book for children. It is very timely and it's about the SDGs. Get on board, children of the world.
Hey.
Oh, great. Great work there.
Yeah.
We look forward to seeing how we can promote them here in Nigeria, especially
Elizabeth,
to
we'll
our
see
rural
how we can bring
community.
it to the Association of Childhood Educators International. See how we can bring the book up to them.